The night was unusually quiet in Pine Ridge, a sleepy town nestled between dense forests and rolling hills. Eli Carter sat on the porch of his cabin, adjusting the lens of his telescope. A lifelong stargazer, he found solace in the vastness of the cosmos, far away from the noise of people and their problems. Tonight, however, something extraordinary interrupted his routine. A streak of light tore across the sky, brighter than any shooting star Eli had ever seen. It moved with unnatural speed, trailing fire as it plummeted toward Earth. For a moment, the entire forest lit up like daylight. Then came the crash, a deafening boom that rattled windows and sent birds scattering into the darkness. Eli froze, his heart pounding. Whatever it was, it hadn't fallen far. Curiosity got the better of him. Grabbing a flashlight and an old baseball bat for protection, he ventured into the woods. The air smelled of burnt metal and scorched pine needles. Branches snapped underfoot as he followed the glow emanating faintly through the trees. When he reached the clearing, what he saw defied explanation. At the center of a crater lay not debris but a woman, or at least something resembling one. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, reflecting the moonlight in waves. Long hair cascaded over her shoulders, glowing faintly blue. She wore a tattered garment that seemed woven from threads of light itself. But what startled Eli most were her eyes. They glowed softly, piercing through the shadows like twin stars. She stirred weakly, wincing as if every movement caused her pain. Instinctively, Eli stepped closer. Are you okay?" he asked hesitantly, gripping the flashlight tighter. Her lips parted, though no sound came out. Instead, a voice echoed directly inside his mind. "Help me." Eli stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. "What? Who are you?" "I am Laura," the voice replied calmly, despite her obvious distress. "My ship has failed. I am stranded." Stranded? Ship? Eli's thoughts raced. Was this some kind of hoax? An elaborate prank? Yet there was no denying the unearthly presence before him. He glanced around nervously, half expecting cameras or hidden observers. But they were alone in the woods. "I shouldn't do this," he muttered to himself. Helping strangers, even human ones, was risky business. And this wasn't even human. Still, looking at her fragile form, he couldn't bring himself to leave her behind. Something about her vulnerability struck a chord deep within him. "All right," he said finally, lowering the bat. "Let's get you out of here." Using his jacket to shield her from the cold, Eli helped Laura to her feet. She leaned heavily on him, her weight surprisingly light. As they made their way back to the cabin, she spoke again, not with words but images and feelings flashing through his mind. Scenes of distant planets, towering crystalline cities, and beings unlike anything he'd imagined flooded his thoughts. It was overwhelming but oddly beautiful. When they reached the safety of his cabin, Eli locked the door and set her down on the couch. He grabbed a blanket and draped it over her trembling form. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, not just observing life from afar, but part of something bigger. Little did he know, this encounter would change everything for both of them. As days turned into weeks, life at Eli's cabin settled into a strange but comforting rhythm. Laura continued to recover, her strength returning steadily. Yet the peace they had found was short-lived. Strange occurrences began disrupting the quiet of Pine Ridge, casting a shadow over their newfound harmony. It started with small things, farmers reporting missing livestock, eerie lights hovering above the forest canopy late at night, and an unsettling hum that seemed to vibrate through the air. At first, Eli dismissed them as coincidences or overactive imaginations. But when he noticed burn marks on trees near his cabin one morning, his unease grew. The marks were unmistakably unnatural, resembling scorch patterns left by advanced energy weapons. Laura sensed his worry. "They are here," she said gravely during breakfast, her glowing eyes clouded with dread. When Eli pressed her for details, she explained that enforcers from Luminaris must have tracked her ship's crash coordinates. They wouldn't stop until they retrieved her, or worse, erased all traces of her existence. Eli's stomach churned. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded, his voice rising despite himself. "I hoped I was wrong," Allura admitted quietly. "But now there is no doubt. We cannot stay here." Panic clawed at Eli's chest, but he forced himself to think. Leaving meant abandoning everything he knew, yet staying put them both in danger. He decided to act quickly. That evening, while Allura rested, he rummaged through boxes in his attic, searching for anything useful. Among old electronics and forgotten gadgets, he found what he needed: antique radio equipment salvaged from his grandfather's workshop. Though outdated, it might be enough to mask Allura's unique energy signature, the very thing the enforcers used to locate her. With trembling hands, Eli rigged the devices together, creating a makeshift jammer. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. As they tested it outside under cover of darkness, Allura placed her hand on his shoulder. "You risk much for me," she said softly. Her gratitude washed over him like warmth, easing some of his fear. The reprieve didn't last long. 2 nights later, the forest erupted in chaos. Bright beams sliced through the trees, illuminating the ground in harsh white light. A sleek, cloaked ship descended silently, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Eli grabbed Allura's arm, pulling her behind a cluster of rocks just as drones zipped past, scanning the area with mechanical precision. "We need to move," Eli whispered urgently. Heart pounding, they darted deeper into the woods, dodging searchlights and explosions from energy blasts. One drone locked onto them, firing a beam that narrowly missed Eli's leg. In desperation, Allura stepped forward, raising her hands. A pulse of light shot from her palms, disabling the drone mid-flight. It crashed into the dirt with a sizzle. Though victorious, the effort left her drained. She collapsed against Eli, breathing heavily. "I can't keep doing this," she murmured. "They'll find us again." Eli held her tightly, resolve hardening within him. If staying hidden wasn't an option, then running would have to be. Together, they limped back to the cabin under the cover of dawn, knowing their time in Pine Ridge was running out. For now, they were safe, but only barely. The hunters were closing in, and neither of them could afford another mistake. Life in the city had begun to feel almost normal for Eli and Allura, at least as normal as it could be given their extraordinary circumstances. They found a rhythm. Eli worked odd jobs to make ends meet, while Allura explored her growing passion for painting, turning their small apartment into a vibrant studio filled with swirling colors and half-finished canvases. Yet beneath this fragile semblance of routine, both knew that danger still loomed. One evening, as they sat together watching the news, a breaking story caught their attention. Scientists had discovered fragments of advanced technology near Pine Ridge, the remains of Allura's ship. Dubbed Project Horizon, the findings sparked global excitement. Experts claimed the tech held the key to interstellar travel, promising humanity's first steps beyond its solar system. Governments, corporations, and media outlets scrambled to capitalize on the discovery, hailing it as a new era for mankind. Allura froze, her glowing eyes fixed on the screen. "This is bad," she whispered, her voice tight with worry. Eli turned to her, alarmed. "What do you mean?" "The technology isn't meant for humans," she explained, her hands trembling slightly. "It's part of Luminaris enslavement protocols, tools designed to dominate less advanced species. If they replicate it..." She didn't need to finish. Eli understood immediately. Humanity wasn't ready for such power, and if Luminaris learned about Earth's attempts to harness their tech, it would only escalate the threat. The enforcers might return, not just for Allura, but to claim the planet itself. "We have to stop them," Allura said firmly, rising to her feet. "How?" Eli asked, frustration creeping into his tone. "We're 2 people against an entire world." But Allura's resolve was unshakable. "If I can disable the project, I can buy us time. Maybe even prevent them from using it altogether." The plan was reckless, bordering on suicidal, but Eli couldn't argue. He knew Alara was right. They couldn't sit idly by while humanity unknowingly invited disaster. Together, they devised a risky strategy: infiltrate the heavily guarded research facility, where the tech was being studied, and destroy it before it could be weaponized. Days later, under the cover of darkness, they approached the facility on foot. Dressed in stolen uniforms and armed with makeshift tools, they slipped past security checkpoints using Alara's telepathic abilities to mask their presence. Her powers were weaker now, drained from months of disuse, but she pushed through the strain, determined not to fail. Inside, the facility buzzed with activity. Scientists bustled between labs, analyzing pieces of alien machinery displayed behind reinforced glass. Alara's heart sank as she recognized components of her ship's core, a reminder of everything she'd lost. But there was no time for sentimentality. Guided by Eli's steady hand, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, avoiding cameras and patrols. Finally, they reached the central lab. Massive servers hummed with energy, connected to the alien tech via wires and circuits. Alara placed her hands on the device, closing her eyes. As she focused, a pulse of light surged through the equipment, overloading the systems in a cascade of sparks and smoke. Alarms blared instantly, red lights flashing throughout the building. "Let's go," Eli shouted, grabbing her arm. But Alara hesitated, swaying on her feet. The effort had taken its toll, her skin dimmed, her breathing ragged. "I'm sorry," she murmured, collapsing into Eli's arms. As guards stormed toward them, Eli hoisted her onto his back and ran, adrenaline fueling every step. Bullets whizzed past, explosions rocked the halls, but he refused to let go. Together, they burst into the night, disappearing into the shadows just as reinforcements arrived. Though battered and exhausted, they had succeeded for now. But Alara's sacrifice came at a cost. She had used nearly all her remaining energy to disable the tech, leaving her mortal and vulnerable. As they fled the scene, Eli realized something crucial. Protecting Earth and each other would require more than courage. It would demand everything they had left to give. The aftermath of their daring escape left Eli and Alara shaken but alive. They found refuge in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, far from prying eyes. Alara lay on a makeshift cot, her once luminous skin now pale and fragile, her breathing shallow. The weight of what she had done hung heavy in the air. By disabling the alien tech, she had severed her last ties to Luminaris, not just physically, but spiritually. She was no longer the radiant being who had fallen from the stars. She was human now, in every way that mattered. Eli sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "You saved us," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved everyone." Alara managed a faint smile, though it didn't reach her dimmed eyes. "At what cost?" she murmured. "I've lost my powers, my connection to my people, everything that made me who I am." "You're still you," Eli insisted, squeezing her hand, stronger than ever. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the first light of dawn crept through cracks in the walls, casting golden streaks across the dusty floor. It was quiet, too quiet, but the silence gave them space to reflect. "I used to think belonging meant returning home," Alara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Luminaris isn't my home anymore. Not after what they did to me. And not after," she trailed off, glancing at Eli. "Not after finding you." Her words sent a jolt through him. Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the sacrifices, he couldn't imagine life without her. He leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then stay," he said simply. "Stay here, with me. We'll figure out the rest together." Tears welled up in Alara's eyes, spilling down her cheeks. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt truly free. Free from the expectations of her people, free from the fear of being hunted, free to choose her own path. And she chose this one, with Eli among humans, embracing imperfection and love. As days turned into weeks, they began rebuilding their lives. With the alien tech destroyed, global interest in interstellar travel waned, replaced by debates over ethics and caution. The enforcers never returned, perhaps deciding Earth wasn't worth the risk, or perhaps because Alara was no longer a threat. Either way, the world moved on, oblivious to the battle fought in its shadows. Alara continued painting, her art gaining recognition in local galleries. Her pieces, filled with swirling colors and raw emotion, resonated deeply with viewers. Eli supported her every step of the way, finding joy in seeing her thrive. Together, they explored the beauty of Earth, the chaos of crowded markets, the serenity of sunsets, the warmth of shared laughter. One evening, as they stood on a hill overlooking the city lights, Alara turned to Eli. "Do you think we'll always be running?" she asked, her tone lighter than before. "Maybe," he replied with a shrug. "But as long as we're running together, I don't care where we end up." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like an outsider. She belonged, not to a planet or a species, but to the person standing beside her. And in that moment, under the vast expanse of stars, both knew they had made the right choice. Together, they embraced an uncertain future, united by love and a shared commitment to protecting the fragile beauty of Earth and each other. The days that followed were tense, filled with whispered plans and stolen moments of quiet. Eli and Alara knew they couldn't stay in Pine Ridge much longer, but neither wanted to face the reality of leaving. Instead, they clung to the fragile normalcy they had built together, savoring every shared laugh, every glance, every touch. Yet beneath the surface, emotions simmered, feelings neither of them dared to fully acknowledge. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, they sat outside on the porch. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine. Alara tilted her head back, gazing at the stars. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to live among them?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with longing. Eli hesitated before answering. "I used to dream about it," he admitted. "But now, I don't know. Space seems so big, so cold. It's not for me." Alara turned to look at him, her glowing eyes searching his face. "And yet, here I am, an alien from another world, sitting beside you under your sky. Does it feel strange?" "Strange isn't the word," Eli said with a small smile. "You've changed everything, Alara. Before you came, I thought I knew who I was. Now," he trailed off, unsure how to finish. She reached out tentatively, her hand brushing against his. Her skin was warm despite its metallic sheen, sending a shiver down his spine. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, without warning, Alara leaned closer, her mind reaching into his. Images flooded Eli's thoughts, her memories of Luminaris, the pain of exile, and something new. Flashes of herself watching him sleep, laughing at his clumsy attempts to explain Earth customs, feeling a warmth she couldn't name whenever he smiled. Eli pulled away, startled. "What was that?" he asked, his heart racing. "I'm sorry," Alara whispered, her cheeks glowing faintly, a sign of embarrassment. "I didn't mean to intrude, but you have such strong feelings. I couldn't help but see them." He stared at her, torn between anger and confusion. "Feelings? What kind of feelings?" She hesitated, then spoke gently. "You're afraid of losing me, afraid that once my ship is repaired, I'll leave you behind." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. Was it that obvious? "Of course I'm afraid," he snapped, standing abruptly. "How could I not be? You belong out there." He gestured toward the stars. "Not stuck here with someone like me." Alara rose to her feet, stepping closer until she stood inches away. "You think I'd want to go back?" she asked, her voice trembling. Luminaris is beautiful, yes, but it's hollow. There's no room for this. She placed a hand over her chest, mimicking the human gesture for emotion. For freedom. For love. The word hung between them, heavy and unspoken. Love. Could it even exist between two beings from different worlds? Eli wanted to believe it could, but doubt gnawed at him. "You don't know what you're saying," he muttered, turning away. "You're scared, confused. Once you're healed, once you remember who you really are, you'll realize this. Bus, it's impossible." "No," Elara said firmly, grabbing his arm and forcing him to face her. "It's not impossible, not if we choose it." For a long moment, they stood there, locked in each other's gaze. Finally, Eli sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "Choosing isn't enough," he said quietly. "There's still the Enforcers, your people, the whole damn universe trying to tear us apart." Elara smiled faintly, her luminous eyes softening. "Then let's fight for it. Together." As the night deepened around them, Eli realized something. Whether they succeeded or failed, Elara had already become a part of him, a spark of light in his otherwise ordinary life. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth fighting for. Over the next few days, Eli found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. Elara stayed at his cabin, recovering from her injuries while adapting to Earth's gravity and atmosphere. She was weak but curious, often asking questions about everything she saw. His books, his telescope, even the way sunlight filtered through the curtains. Her presence filled the quiet cabin with an energy Eli hadn't felt in years. To communicate, Elara used telepathy, projecting thoughts directly into Eli's mind. At first, it unnerved him. Her voice inside his head was intimate and unfamiliar. But as they spent more time together, he grew accustomed to it. In return, he did his best to explain human customs and language. He pointed to objects, repeating their names slowly so she could mimic them. "Cup," he said one morning, holding up a mug of tea. "Cup," she echoed, her pronunciation soft and melodic. Elara also shared glimpses of her world, Luminaris. Through flashes of memory, Eli saw towering spires made of crystal that pulsed with light, vast fields of glowing plants, and skies painted in hues no human eye had ever witnessed. The people of Luminaris lived in harmony, their minds linked through a neural network that allowed them to share emotions and thoughts instantly. It sounded like paradise, or so Eli thought. "But if your world is perfect, why were you exiled?" he asked one evening as they sat by the fire. Elara hesitated, her luminous eyes dimming slightly. Memories flooded Eli's mind without warning. A council chamber bathed in cold light, stern faces staring down at her. Accusations flying like arrows. She had dared to question the system, arguing that suppressing individuality for collective peace came at too great a cost. For speaking out, she was cast out, sent drifting through space in a small vessel meant to carry her far from home. Eli listened intently, feeling a pang of sympathy. "You must miss it," he said softly. "Your family, your people." "I do not," Elara replied firmly, though her tone betrayed sadness. "They feared what I represented, the unknown, the unpredictable. Here, on Earth, I see chaos, imperfection, but also freedom. You create art, music, stories. You live despite uncertainty. That is something my people cannot comprehend." Her words struck a chord in Eli. For years, he'd isolated himself, finding comfort in routine and predictability. But now, watching Elara marvel at the simplest things, a rainstorm outside the window, the crackle of the fireplace, or the taste of chocolate, he began to see his own world through new eyes. One afternoon, Elara discovered a box of paints Eli kept tucked away in a corner. Intrigued, she dipped her fingers into the colors and smeared them onto paper. What emerged was unlike anything Eli had ever seen. Swirling patterns of light and shadow, abstract yet alive with emotion. "This is how we express ourselves on Luminaris," she explained, smiling faintly, through resonance. But here, I can touch, create. As weeks passed, their bond deepened. Eli taught Alara how to cook simple meals, though she found the concept of seasoning baffling, and she introduced him to meditative exercises that calmed his restless mind. They laughed over misunderstandings, like when she accidentally turned on the shower instead of the sink, soaking the bathroom floor. Slowly, the loneliness Eli had carried for so long began to fade. But beneath the surface, doubts lingered. Alara still spoke occasionally of repairing her ship, of returning to the stars, and Eli couldn't shake the fear that someday she would leave him behind. Yet for now, they lived in a fragile bubble of understanding, learning from each other and discovering pieces of themselves they hadn't known existed. Together, they'd bridged two worlds, one alien, one human, and forged a connection neither could have anticipated. With her ship destroyed and the enforcers retreating into the stars, Alara faced an undeniable truth. She was no longer just a visitor to Earth. She was stranded. The realization weighed heavily on both her and Eli as they returned to his cabin under the cover of dawn. For the first time, there was no escape plan, no hope of returning to Luminaris. This new reality forced them to confront what came next: survival. Eli knew they couldn't stay in Pine Ridge. The crash site, though reduced to ashes, would eventually draw attention from scientists, government agents, or worse. The enforcers might return if they suspected she still lived. They needed a fresh start somewhere far away, where anonymity offered protection. After packing essentials, they left the cabin behind, driving for hours until they reached a bustling city miles away. It was chaotic, noisy, and overwhelming, but perfect for blending in. Alara struggled at first. Her shimmering skin and glowing eyes made her stand out like a beacon in the crowded streets. To help her adapt, Eli devised ways to disguise her alien features. Using makeup he bought from a drugstore, he carefully dulled the metallic sheen of her skin, making it appear more human. He also found tinted contact lenses online, which muted the brightness of her luminous eyes. Though clumsy and imperfect, the transformation worked well enough for her to pass as human, at least from a distance. Living among humans proved challenging yet fascinating for Alara. She marveled at the simplest things: the aroma of street food wafting through alleys, the rhythm of music blasting from passing cars, and the laughter of children playing in parks. One day, while wandering through an art gallery, she discovered abstract paintings that reminded her of the meditative exercises she once practiced on Luminaris. Inspired, she began painting herself, using bold colors and swirling patterns to express emotions too complex for words. Her artwork became a way to connect with the world around her, and with Eli. Despite these small joys, shadows lingered. At night, when the city fell quiet, Alara often heard faint whispers in her mind, echoes of her neural link to Luminaris. The voices tempted her, promising forgiveness if she surrendered and allowed herself to be taken back. "You don't belong here," they hissed softly. "You are one of us." These intrusions left her shaken, but Eli stayed by her side, grounding her in the present. "You're not alone anymore," he reminded her one evening as they sat together on their apartment balcony. "Whatever those voices say, whatever doubts you have, you've chosen this life, and I'm here with you." Alara nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her gaze. "Sometimes I wonder who I am now," she confessed. "Am I still Alara of Luminaris, or am I something else?" "You're exactly who you want to be," Eli replied firmly. "That's the beauty of being here. You get to decide." His words brought her comfort, but deep down, Alara knew the struggle wasn't over. Living among humans meant embracing their imperfections, their unpredictability, and their fears. Yet, even amidst the chaos, she felt something she'd never experienced on Luminaris: freedom. Freedom to choose, to create, to love. As weeks turned into months, Alara grew more confident in her new identity. Still, the question remained: how long could they truly hide? Somewhere beyond the stars, her people watched and waited. And sooner or later, the fragile peace they had built would be tested again. The calm before the storm shattered one fateful night. Eli and Elara had barely settled into restless sleep when a deafening roar shook the cabin. The windows rattled violently, and a blinding light flooded the room, forcing them awake. Outside, 3 sleek ships hovered ominously, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal. Beams of energy cut through the trees, setting the forest ablaze. "They found us," Elara whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. She grabbed Eli's hand, pulling him toward the door. "We need to run." But escape wasn't so simple. As they dashed into the woods, drones zipped after them, firing beams that scorched the ground inches from their feet. Eli's heart pounded as he pushed himself harder, dragging Elara along. They couldn't outrun these machines forever. Suddenly, Elara stopped, planting her feet firmly on the earth. "Go," she urged, pushing Eli behind her. "I'll hold them off." "No," Eli shouted, grabbing her arm. "You're not sacrificing yourself for me." "I have no choice," she replied, her glowing eyes fierce. With a deep breath, she raised her hands, summoning a pulse of radiant energy. It surged outward, striking the nearest drone and sending it crashing to the ground. But the effort left her staggering, her strength visibly waning. Eli caught her as she stumbled, his mind racing. "There has to be another way," he said desperately. Elara looked at him, her expression softening. "Destroy my ship," she murmured. "If they can't take me back, they'll leave you alone." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Destroy her only link to Luminaris, her only chance of returning home. He wanted to argue, to find another solution. But deep down, he knew she was right. If the enforcers retrieved her ship, they could use its technology against Earth. And if they captured her, he shuddered at the thought. With great reluctance, Eli nodded. "All right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm not leaving your side." Together, they fought their way back to the crash site, dodging blasts and weaving through the chaos. When they reached the wreckage, Elara hesitated, running her fingers over the charred remains of her vessel. For a moment, Eli saw pain flicker across her face, a pang of homesickness, perhaps, or regret. Then she stepped back, nodding to him. "Do it," she said quietly. Eli didn't hesitate. Using fuel cans scavenged from nearby debris, he doused the ship in flammable liquid. Striking a match, he tossed it onto the frame. Flames roared to life, consuming the wreckage in seconds. The heat was intense, forcing them to retreat farther into the woods. Behind them, the enforcers' ships faltered, their systems disrupted by the destruction of the core technology. As the fire raged, Elara collapsed to her knees, weakened by the strain of battle and the loss of her ship. Eli knelt beside her, cradling her in his arms. "It's done," he whispered. "You're safe now." Her breathing was shallow, her luminous skin dimming slightly. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "For everything." Tears welled up in Eli's eyes as he held her close. He knew this moment changed everything. Without her ship, Elara had no way back to Luminaris. She was truly stranded on Earth, with him. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but also something else. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this was where she belonged all along. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Eli made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, he would protect her with his life, if necessary.